But yeah, welcome to the transfer student, kind of orientation, college day, spring 21. Here we are. All of you should be transfer students coming from a different school. And so we're excited that you've chosen CU Boulder. So welcome. I mentioned this earlier, but if you do need closed captioning along the toolbar for Zoom, you should see a button for closed captioning. Feel free to hit that button and it should bring up some captioning for you. So let's get started. A little bit of kind of what we're doing today. An introduction today for what we're doing is, we didn't want to kind of give you the same intro to college 101 experience that, first year students that this is their first institution ever. You've probably already gone through something like that. So instead, we've designed something a little bit more specific for transfer students that actually involved a lot of input from transfer students that came before you, as far as kind of what are things that they needed that would have been helpful in these first initial days. So yeah, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna go over some quick terminology about self-awareness, growth mindset, uncertainty. Things that you're probably already, aware of the definitions of, but just to kind of spend a little bit of time today really thinking about these concepts and kind of how they apply to, your transfer to CU. We'll talk a bit about that Arts and Sciences Academic Success Campaign. That's from the previous transfer students talking about, what they wish they would have known, what they found really challenging, and what they also found really successful. And then we're going to go through a personal academic kind of success plan, not all the way, but just kind of starting those pieces to give you a little bit of a taste of what our coaching program is like in the College of Arts and Sciences. So yeah, we'll kind of get into that as we go down the line. But who am I? So my name is Gabe Aponte. I am an academic advisor in the College of Arts and Sciences here. I've been at CU for about 9 years now, mostly with advising. Yeah, a little bit about kind of what the pictures are in front of you. I kind of wanted to share one of my kind of proudest achievements as an advisor. If you look on the picture on the left, that's actually me with the yellow backpack straps, you'll see, just with significantly less hair. This was all taken in Nicaragua. This is a program that I kind of built with, in partnership with my academic program, the International Affairs Department, along with the college and stuff like that. And most of the students you see in that picture are students that were academically not doing so well. A lot were on probation, some were on suspension. And we designed an opportunity to kind of build community around a group of students that were academically not doing so well, along with some that were really high achieving and really had good, what I would consider to be coaching skills as far as time management, stuff like that. Brought them together and we actually did a study abroad service project to Nicaragua. So yeah, so it was just one of those things where, when people come together and when they can share their experiences and stuff like that, it all snowballed, and it started with just a small group of people coming together to talk about their experiences. And then it ended up with all of us getting to do this amazing community project in rural Nicaragua. So yeah, that was several years ago. It feels like it at least maybe about 3-4 years ago at this time, but hopefully something that we can kind of bring back later. So today, what we're kind of going to be dipping our toes into are going to be a lot of questions and reflections, a lot of self-selected strategies that I want you to be thinking over and stuff like that. Overall, this is just supposed to be a time to give you a chance to think about kind of where you're coming from as far as your pre-transfer, your former institution and stuff like that, and start creating strategies for how you're going to support yourself in a new environment, as well as learning about other people's experiences. I do suggest that you find, pencil, paper, pen, something to write down. You can totally type in like a Word document, but I am a big fan of writing things down, by hand. I think there's just something more powerful of putting a pen to paper when you're trying to think about, really deep things. But yeah, do whatever works best for you. And of course, this is all kind of, challenge by choice. You don't really have to go through the activity if you don't want to, but I do suggest it. It's, again, transfer students have said this has been really impactful and it's actually helped them start on the right foot. So hopefully you'll find the same. So going back to those definitions, self-awareness, I think, is something that everyone, again, thinks that they know plenty about. But I think a lot of people think of it as something that you either have or you don't. And that's really kind of not what it's about. Like, I think there's plenty of people that you could say that just lack self-awareness, but, I think you yourself would say, I am very, self-aware and stuff like that. But rarely do we think about it as a skill that you have to keep honing and keep working on. Like, when's the last time that you worked on your self-awareness? And chances are you have, but you just didn't think about it that way. So to work on your self-awareness, you should be thinking about, who do you want to be? How do you want to get there? And then, the hardest part, what are your strengths and what are the challenges? I think a lot of people, and especially students, really focus on this time on the who do you want to be, right? You came to college because you're hoping to become something more than you currently are, or try to learn something that you don't already know. But it really kind of starts to that critical thinking stops when you get to the how do you want to get there? Oftentimes you'll find one path, maybe not the path of least resistance per se, but you will find a path that works for you. And then once you find that path, you'll stop thinking about different options and stuff like that, which can lead to problems if you come into challenges that come with that singular plan. So yeah, with that, how do you get there? We're going to talk about how do you make multiple plans, multiple pathways so that when paths break down, you're not kind of stuck in the lurch. And then, yeah, with the strengths and challenges, it's really easy to think about your strengths. Like, what you're good at, by now probably where your strengths lie. It's the challenges piece that you probably are also aware of, but it's harder to think about. It's harder to create strategies. And it's a little more, uncomfortable, we'll say, to do that. So the second thing we want to talk about is a growth mindset. This might be something that's maybe a little new to folks. Really the upshot of it is talking about mindset fluidity, that your mindset on various topics will probably change, over time. It's not to say that these kind of two mindsets of fixed or growth are, necessarily one is good and one is bad. It's just that when you are in a fixed mindset, it's something that is, firmly resolved. And, the two words we think about are stuck, can't, and I would add in won't as well. Again, very firm, very resolved, and these are good for certain, for certain things to have your mindset set around, but not always. And when we're talking about the context of your transition to CU, we definitely want to think about that growth mindset of wanting to try, being open, moving forward. And yeah, like, this is going to be hard to kind of keep up with during this spring semester as you're transitioning probably in a lot of things. Some of you are probably coming from different states. There's just so many different changes happening that it's going to be tough to be like, I want to be in a growth mindset for all of this. So don't worry about that. Like, you'll work through it. Just make sure that you're picking a few things that you're really being focused that, okay, I want to grow in these areas. In thinking about tips as far as like, how do you go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? The four things that we kind of want to instill in you is that, add yet to your sentences when you're talking about stuff. If you feel like you're stuck or you can't do something, add yet. Maybe, I don't think I can do this presentation. I can't, I won't. Like, well, I can just say, I haven't done this presentation yet, which is a lie, I've done this before, but anyway. With that, just adding yet to it has a lot of power in just those three little letters. Adding it to things that you write down, especially when you're looking at challenges and barriers, add that yet. Part two, failing is trying. I feel like, a lot of the conversations I'm having with students, there is not only a fear of failure, but then after failure is accomplished, and I do use the word accomplished, after failing is accomplished, it's just a big letdown. Like, this is something that shouldn't have happened. But I really, I challenge my students, and I challenge you that, like, failing is a big part of life. It is a big part of college, as far as you're going to try a bunch of new things as you discover not only your academic path, but your social interests, figuring out who you are. And not everything is going to fit just right. Not everything is going to be a smashing success. But in doing so, in trying new things, and even if it results in a less than optimal outcome, you are going to be learning so much about, different situations, yourself, the communities that you're surrounding yourself with. Like, failing is trying. And, again, getting out of that mindset that, failure is bad or failure is a lack of success. It's just you moving forward and trying and, developing. Part three is that what helps you think optimistically about your learning. This right now, I think is really difficult because, morale, I think, is at an all-time low with all students as far as wanting to find that drive to move forward and stuff like that. So, finding an environment, finding a way that you can think positively about your, your academics, your learning environment, everything that's happening in this transition. Again, it's a tall order, but just trying to create strategies. And if you start to feel like, okay, there are certain pieces here that are adding negativity and stuff like that, trying to cut away things that detract from your experience while adding in positive variables. And lastly, I want to talk about kind of the fight, flight, or freeze response to pretty much everything. But of course, in this context, we're talking about your transition to CU. Freeze might be a new variable because I think everyone's aware of the fight or flight response. But oftentimes in new academic settings, especially if maybe you're coming from a community college, a smaller institution, you get to CU and there are massive multi-people offices for every little service that you can imagine. It's really easy to freeze and be like, I have no idea where to start. Like, what do I do? So, as far as thinking about your response to uncertainty and your response to challenges and stuff like that, we want you to choose flight, which is, not just ignoring it, not trying to just push your head down and push through and stuff like that, but flight meaning take a step back, survey the landscape of what this challenge is. And 9 times out of 10, the answer, especially if it's trying to navigate CEU, the answer is going to be, I should probably contact my academic advisor. We'll talk about advising and stuff like that at the end, but just know that at CU, even though it is a big organization, there are people to help you navigate it. People like myself that have been a part of CU for a very long time that can just kind of help you get you to the right resources if we are not the kind of the premier one. And then lastly, I want to quickly kind of go over uncertainty and kind of this thought of, is it an obstacle or an opportunity? This is, a little rah-rah and a little fluffy as far as thinking about like uncertainty as an opportunity, but it's totally true. Every single student in this room has faced uncertainty at, a certain point, but all of you share kind of the same moment where, whether planned or not, you all had a moment at your prior institution where you knew that you wanted to transfer to CU, but you probably didn't know exactly how to do that, right? There was that uncertainty of, okay, I know that I don't want to continue where I'm at. I know where I want to get to, but then you somehow navigated that because you're here with us today. That right there is growth. That right there is a strength in that, again, some of you might be thinking about transferring as a reset, like, it's a reset in my academics, whether that be good or bad and stuff like that. It's all going to be, useful as far as the skills that you've learned, as far as navigating all of the different applications and finding times and, making sure that you're staying alert to your email. All of these small skills that you're building are going to be a tremendous strength, not only right now as you navigate a new institution, but throughout your life, as you start to navigate more and more uncertainty, you're going to lean on these strengths that these skills that you're developing right now to help you later on. With navigating uncertainty, again, we talk about just that growth mindset and self-awareness are the 2 big keys. Again, wanting to get through it and doing it in a positive way, and then being self-aware of, again, who you are, what you're kind of bringing to the situation, where your strengths are going to be and what challenges you're going to hold. Again, kind of a lot to think about in everyday kind of interactions and stuff like that. And so, none of us expect you to be thinking about every little decision you make and every little uncertain obstacle or opportunity that it presents itself for you to think about it in this exact way. But hopefully, if you take time to reflect about some of the bigger challenges that you faced and kind of how you navigated through it, you'll start to see themes emerge of how you personally handle adversity, how you personally overcome these challenges. So that if you've never really thought about it, that if you start to see those themes emerge, it'll be easier. So when future challenges kind of crop up, you know what to do, where your strengths lie, so that, getting through it will be smoother. You'll have a lot more self-confidence in getting through that challenge. So again, that's where all of this is leading, as far as like taking all these small little individual situations and building upon them. So our student success campaign, this was for spring of 2020, so not that long ago. We kind of polled a lot of our transfer students that had at least transferred within the last year, and asked them about what were some of the things that they wish they would have either known or that they wish they would have worked on immediately upon transfer to CU that has been kind of helpful now. And the 3 big themes that emerged were time management, office hours, and community. So, with time management, students were talking about just knowing how to structure your day, your week, your month, your year, especially if you were going to be managing more than just your academics, if you have, a job, if you have other like social events and stuff like that, that you have to also kind of keep on your calendar. And yeah, so it's going to be a lot to kind of juggle and just figuring out, what do you do with your time and how do you make the most use of it? Office hours, again, might be something that you're already used to doing, depending on where you're kind of coming from. But this was something that kind of surprised me, honestly, when I saw that was, office hours were something that were a little bit intimidating for transfer students coming into a new environment. So yeah, we'll talk about kind of what that looks like, but really they wanted to, and I would too, I would echo this, like introduce yourself to your instructors as soon as possible. Even if you don't think you have a whole lot to ask, in office hours, just kind of going and, introducing yourself and making kind of like connection with your faculty is going to be really, really important for, kind of your success, how you do in that class, and then feeling confident that if an issue does come up in the class, that you've already established a relationship with that, faculty member. So it doesn't feel like out of the blue to introduce yourself and then, ask a question about what's going on. Lastly, and probably, the most hard or the hardest one is going to be community. How do you grow your network? If you haven't already established a network, how do you find your people, your community here at CU? And yeah, and especially if you're thinking about where you're coming from in your previous institution, if you didn't enjoy your community, or if that's something that's really important to you, is finding a new one. Knowing that it's okay to change. It's this is a good time to kind of reinvent who you are, who you want to be, especially if you start to feel that your values are shifting and stuff like that. Yeah. But this is also probably the hardest one to meet new people, especially in the kind of the era of online learning. How do you build community in an online world? It's a big question. So I'm going to go through all of these kind of quickly as far as what our transfer students have kind of said about it, as well as our coaching team, some kind of tips and tricks from them. So time management, I think it's a bit of a misnomer. I really consider it to be self-management. But if you kind of talk with someone and tell them that they have poor self-management, that doesn't usually go over so well. So it's kind of nice to call it time management. Because yeah, with time, there's not much you can really do with managing it. It's pretty much going to keep moving along. So it's really about how do you maintain your productivity? How do you manage yourself in the context of time and accomplishing your to-do lists and stuff like that. So something that students talked about is that, often, probably one way or method to get organized, but there are several. So we want to kind of bring it with time management. I am much more of this kind of graphic here. I have to-do lists as far as like what I'm working on and stuff like that, but it is a chaotic mess of Post-it notes and stuff like that. But knowing where the Post-it notes are, like, a Post-it note on my screen means, something versus something that's on, a piece of paper. That to me is far more organized, and it's perhaps chaos to other people than say something like, I cut it out, than just a list, a grid of just, okay, 8, 9, 10, a schedule of every hour, every minute of the day. I can't do that. That is not my style. I have to be a little bit more fluid, and so long as I can focus on my tasks, that's more important than scheduling everything down to the minute. But again, it's different for every person. I definitely work with some people that, they walk into my office and they look at it and it's just, causes them a bit of a panic of how do you keep track of all of this? I'm like, oh, but it's all color coded and it's all by location. Like, I know what it means, but finding, your organizational method and your kind of self-management system that works for you is going to be a big thing. With office hours, the way that you're going to locate those, because the biggest thing that we heard from students is they just didn't know how to locate office hours. They didn't know when their faculty held them. The 2 places that they should live will be on the Canvas page for your individual classes, and then as well as the syllabus. I'm pretty sure that it has to be listed in the syllabus. Most office hours are going to be remote through Zoom and stuff like that, but definitely write down, what or who the instructors are for all your classes, when their office hours are, and if they have like a permanent Zoom link, like what that link is. But do write it down, and then, again, early on in the semester, attend these office hours, introduce yourself. Again, even if you don't think that you have much to say, But just, even if it's just introduce yourself and that you're excited about the content, again, making your faculty aware of who you are, your presence in the class, and kind of your excitement about it, it'll go a long way. Yeah, if you ever have any questions about, office hours and stuff like that, you can always bring that to your advisor and stuff like that. Or if you're really kind of seeking, if you want to start more in-depth conversations, but you're not sure how, talking with your advisor is going to be a great way to kind of get extra information on how to connect with your faculty. So lastly, community. And the one that I feel like I have the least amount of answers for, I'm afraid. With the online world, it's proving to be much more difficult for students to meet one another, especially if you're new and you're trying to meet different student orgs and stuff like that. Know that there still are a lot of student groups that are meeting virtually, but kind of during this pandemic time, we aren't allowed to kind of mingle on campus and meet in groups and stuff like that. So a lot of the welcome events that we would have had, and a lot of the ability for you to meet different groups of students, different organizations, and student interest groups and stuff like that, it's going to be a little more limited. So as far as how are you going to meet people in this new setting, a lot of my students are meeting people through their classes and stuff like that. There is a bit of an uptick in study groups, just because students are overwhelmingly needing a little bit more support during this time in an online academic environment, and really connecting with one another has been the best route, as far as creating study groups that meet outside of class and stuff like that. And that's where the majority of my students have been kind of meeting one another. But as you kind of navigate this, hopefully you have some community already kind of built into CU, but we really want to kind of posit these three main questions as far as, how are you going to meet people in this new setting, whether that be through school or, outside of school in the Boulder community, or even if you're still at home and haven't kind of moved to Boulder in your local community, just to kind of find a support system around you. How are you going to connect with staff and faculty in this remote context? And then lastly, who do you want to be in the context of a community? Like, what do you want your role to be? And thinking of that in the context of obviously like CU, but then in the grander scheme too of outside of CU and the communities that you keep around you. So yeah, I will say that as an advisor, we are still connecting with students via Zoom, regularly. It's not quite the same experience as it was in person, but it's actually going really well. Speaking from my own experience, I feel like I'm still making really good connections with my students. It's just, we're all feeling a little isolated, a little bit in our own bubbles, and that makes it really hard to feel like you're part of a community when you're still kind of by yourself. So, hopefully this will be something that passes quickly, but during this time, talking with your advisor about meeting up with student orgs in a remote fashion and stuff like that, and just kind of talking about what your interests are and the type of community that you're looking for at CU is going to be the kind of the first steps. All right, so let's get to the activity, because I do want to leave some time at the end here for Q&A, and we're about halfway through our time. So again, I hope that you have a writing utensils and paper and stuff like that. So pick a category between like the time management, the office hours, the community building piece. And I challenge you just to kind of right now, in whatever sense and fashion it makes for you, to kind of write down some things like, what is your motivation to try something new in this area? What's something that worked for you in your your previous setting and your previous institution that you hope will work now or that you want to build on? Also on the flip side, if there are things that didn't go so well at your previous institution that you want to work on, just kind of start writing things down. It can be just a list of questions. It can be bullets. It can bullet points of like all the different things. It can be pictures. I've had students kind of that did this in like kind of a word bubble doodle. Whatever kind of sense that it makes for you, go ahead and fill it out. We're going to take a few minutes to do this. Just as a note, this is just for you. I'm not going to ask anybody that's in this room right now to like, here, share your screen and tell us all about what's going on. There'll be time for that, in a different session, I'm sure. But for this one, I just want you to take notes, and I do want you to keep them because I want you to be sharing that with your advisor. If you haven't met with them, especially, this will be a great kind of first conversation starter about the stuff that you wrote down. So with it being like 10:26, I'm going to give about 3 minutes just so that we can kind of keep moving through this. And I think 3 minutes will feel like a lot longer time when we're all sitting in silence. So take this time, work on that, and we'll get back to it very soon. All right, we'll wrap up in about 30 more seconds. All right. Awesome. Thank you for those that, kind of went through this, and I hope that you worked on some good questions. I hope that some interesting thoughts came up as far as thinking and reflecting about your previous institution, kind of your new transition to a new school. So kind of next steps, like what do you do with this now? Like you've got, probably some notes scribbled down on a piece of paper. What do you do with all that? So the next steps are just kind of looking at it, figuring out like, how are you going to address maybe some of your questions in here or some of the challenges, and crafting a plan to kind of get through that. Again, sharing this with your academic advisor, especially if it's, some bigger things that you're really worried about as far as maybe, how to manage your time with more classes maybe than you're used to taking, or the maybe higher level of rigor if you're not used to that. Thinking about those questions and sharing them with your academic advisor. We are here to kind of help you also make plans into how you address these pieces. But what would help us is if you were to address these pieces, like what are your strengths? Like, what are you naturally good at? What are your aptitudes that are going to help with addressing this uncertainty and these challenges? And then if you know that there are certain, issues that are going to be coming up, with problems with your your plan or with any of the strategies that you're trying to come up with. So problem solving, with any of these plans, with any plan that you create, there's going to be issues that come up with it. These are kind of some of the questions that a lot of our coaching staff kind of come up with when students are facing issues of time management, office hours, and community. So we want to share these with you as far as with time management. How do you plan to stay organized with some of your classes that are going to be online, some are going to be in person, at least maybe come February. How are you going to stay organized with that? Do you keep a planner usually? Is that planner organized by the week, by the month? What does your support system look like when it comes to your time management? Are you sharing your plans with other people? Do you like to keep it more private? Stuff like that. With office hours, what do you do if the content in your class is more challenging than you initially thought, or maybe a concept isn't kind of clicking? How will you know and what does it feel like when you are struggling with learning new content? As an advisor, again, I can speak that a lot of my students, sometimes won't speak up about there being a problem until well after the problem has been kind of festering for a while. So, what kind of clues and context do you get from yourself when you start to feel like you're struggling in a class or that something isn't clicking, and then reaching out to your faculty and your advising, kind of support staff right away to kind of talk about that. It's going to be key so that, we're not getting into after midterms and then being like, how are things going in your class? And if it's not going well, then, with less time to kind of solve things, it makes it a little more stressful, a little bit more challenging. So being open and honest with your faculty and the staff at CU is going to go a long way. With community, how do you personally feel about being a part of a community while online, and kind of what are the challenges that you foresee personally with that? And then kind of the big thing that we're asking is, what is one small thing you can do this semester to get out of your comfort zone and try to meet someone new, even if we are in an online environment? So yeah, we're still pushing students to try to find a sense of community, to try to find your community at CU, even while we're remote. So yeah, even if it's just one small thing for this semester, I think we challenge you to kind of work on that. And lastly, yeah, we want you to share your plans with those who support you. It's really important that you take all this information. You can keep it to yourself if you are a very personal person, but there's just a great power to sharing it with somebody else and getting their thoughts on it. It really helps with accountability. It really helps hopefully empower you to share something that you have worked on, as far as like, here are all the tips that I'm going to be using, and the things that I'm excited to be learning about and to try out. Share that with people around you that support you, share that with your advisor. It's gonna help. And again, it'll also help then on kind of the flip side, if things start breaking down, if the plans that you're making aren't working, or the paths that you've chosen are just kind of breaking down, then you'll know who your support people are, and they'll be aware of what your plans were, so that they can kind of help you troubleshoot that and kind of get through it. So the last thing that I want to kind of touch on, as far as like, a tool for you, is something that's actually from kind of higher ed college student development theory. It's called hope theory. Really, the upshot and the crux of it is that there are multiple ways to goals, and you have agency as an individual influencing each of those pathways. So thinking about that, there's not just one path to one goal, that you can create multiple paths to your goals, some longer, some shorter, some easier, some harder, and that, keeping as many of those in your mind as possible is great, because it makes you feel more powerful. It makes you feel like you have agency and influence over much more of your life. And then it also helps that if one of those pathways break down, you are then, outfitted and ready, and your mind's going, okay, that's great. I've got another path I can still, take to achieve this goal. Dr. Snyder at the University of Kansas, the three big words were learn, be, and do. So when your pathways break down, big questions ask, what are you learning about what's happening? So again, that failure is trying, failure is learning. What are you learning about what happened? What are you going to do to make adjustments? And then who are you being? And then who do you want to be? And big questions. Some of these, a bit more philosophical in nature, but again, thinking about and being cognizant of your actions and being mindful of the way that you move forward, when facing adversity, That's why it's called hope theory of, how do you generate hope for yourself? Where does that come from? And stuff like that. And this is kind of it, like small successes through adversity is what builds your hope. And so, yeah, if you're ever having a challenge with any of these pieces, as far as, I'm not sure how to make adjustments, like I don't know what adjustments are necessary or, what I'll need to adjust, that's where your advising team comes in. That's where coaching comes in. Like that's where there are so many people at CU that are going to be here to support you through this journey. So if you hit a wall with any of these questions or any of these pieces, your first instinct should be, I should talk to my advisor maybe about this. So yeah, I know that I've probably hit that button far too many times as far as meet with your advisor, talk with your advisor, and I'm going to say it at least 3 more times before the end of the presentation, but it's so true. It's the thing we hear from transfer students, from all students, like your advisor is a good way to get into touch with everything at the university and to get your questions answered and to feel more confident in the choices that you're making. So phrases, as far as that are kind of associated with hope theory, and phrases that we hope that will you can use that when things break down to kind of help you stay motivated. I've got this, move forward, one next step. These are all phrases that transfer students say that they actually use as a part of their the coaching sessions when they make these up. My personal one is the sun will rise. My mother always told me that the worst day of your life is still only 24 hours and the sun will rise the next day. So, I always told her the sun can rise on a worse day, but that's just a bit pessimistic. But it's true, like it's, that phrase does help me of like, well, like even when things are bad and tough, like the sun will rise. It's, tomorrow is a new day. I've got a chance to make, maybe better decisions, stronger decisions, things that will kind of help me get out of whatever funk or whatever hole I feel like I am, I am in. So yeah, think about whatever that, that phrase could be for you, write it down on stuff, think about it. Some people call it a mantra, whatever it is, just finding little things to try to keep you motivated to keep moving forward. So then quick tips that we have, this is just good general context for all students. For anything that you're emailing, your faculty, your staff, anything at CU, make an email signature as a part of your email through CU. In there, make sure that you put your student ID and a return email address. Because as a student, you have like 4 email addresses. Like it'll be like your first name dot your last name. Sometimes there'll be a number like thrown in there with a dash. You'll also have one that's like a combination of the first 2 letters of your first name, the first 2 letters of your last name, and some numbers. Like it can be sometimes difficult, especially if you reach out to people at CU and you don't kind of identify yourself. We might not be able to kind of know immediately who you are from your email address. So making sure that you put an email signature with your name, your student ID, and your email address, it really helps us kind of support you because it's really clear who then we're talking to. Also, your CU email address is your official email address, and so oftentimes I don't like to email out to Gmail accounts because honestly, anybody could be susan.johnson@colorado.edu or at gmail.com. So your Colorado email also identifies you within our system. And so it makes us feel confident if you're like asking about classes, things that might be protected information. I'll release that to you through your CU email address, but if it comes to me from Gmail, oftentimes I'll ask it like, hey, could you route this through your Colorado email just to kind of verify that it's you? So yeah, just to kind of speed things up, use that. Second tip, learning space matters. Even if you're in a very small space with multiple people, finding ways to create a good positive environment for you to tackle your academics is going to be important. Highly recommend noise canceling headphones, putting your phone away, making a designated space that is just for when you're studying and stuff like that. Trying not to study from your bed and stuff like that, and kind of commingling your spaces. Again, not something that everyone can do. Spaces are limited in a lot of households and stuff like that with people working and going to school and stuff like that. So anything you can do to try to kind of carve out a little bit of dedicated space for yourself is going to be a vast improvement, I think, for your semester. Then we have our basic search, the colorado.edu/search. You can use it to search for all things CU. It's going to probably populate a lot of things. So, feel free to use the search and stuff like that. If something isn't clear and evident who you need to be talking to, talk to your advisor. More tips, create a master syllabus. So this kind of comes down to looking at all of your syllabi, knowing when your exams are, writing down when they're going to be, especially with the start planning for them now. The thing I want to throw in there is if any of your exams require a specialized software that you have to use, download it and run it on your computer right away. I had a couple of students that ran into an issue in their final of it required software that they had never downloaded until the day of, and they realized it didn't work for their operating system. And that made some serious issues the day of their finals. So if there are pieces in your syllabus that's like, oh, this class will require X, Y, or Z software, download it, make sure it runs smoothly on your computer so that there's no issues on the line. Staying in touch with your academic advisor. Again, I've already hit on that a bunch of times. And then just know that there are lots of offices at CU to help you kind of consider future plans. I know that right now there's a lot right in front of you as far as just transferring, getting settled, figuring out, the who, what, where, why, all of that. But know that your advisor is going to be talking with you about, our career services department, tips for graduate school if that's something you're interested in. If you're looking into studying abroad, I know it's a weird time to be thinking about that, but it's still, a really popular option, and we still do have abroad programs running. There's just so much to get kind of tapped into, and we don't expect you to exactly know where to start. So sharing kind of what your plans are and what your goals are with your advising team, that's going to be your first step in kind of your future. And then lastly, just be intentional about building your community of support. Now more than ever, it's important to have a really good, strong, positive support group around you. So I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir a bit on this, as again, adults, you've all kind of built your communities and stuff like that. So, but just, I would say, check in on this, check in on yourself, and as far as your role in your community and kind of how your community supports you, and just make sure that it's still a positive relationship. Okay, so deadlines. I am going to put in the chat here this link. I think I can get it. Maybe not. Maybe if one of the other advisors could throw the registrar calendar link into the chat, that'd be fantastic. Bookmark the page for the registrar's calendar. They publish it pretty well in advance. This is going to have everything as far as add deadlines, drop deadlines, when are future classes going to show up in the class search, when can you anticipate your registration to start for future terms. All of that stuff is kind of predetermined. It's on the calendars. Bookmark that. Things like your registration will be kind of dependent upon your credits, so it'll give a range of dates, so you can at least know when you can anticipate that you're going to be registering. And just know that your advisor is going to be busy during those registration periods. So my advice would be meet with your advisor now as early as possible before the semester starts, just to introduce yourself and talk about all these things. But definitely meet again in the month of February, because that's when, about midway through the month, is when we'll see class list posts, or I think March 3rd is when we're going to see class list posts. But we can start making plans for what your summer, what your fall, if you're thinking about abroad, we can start doing that future planning in mid to late February, because then in March you're going to see that your advisor is going to be booked several days, maybe even a week plus out, because there's a lot of students that are coming in for class advice. So, right now, most advisors are, a little busy, but, you'll still be able to see them within a day or two if you have questions, but during registration, that becomes a little bit more difficult. So make sure that you're kind of, writing these down in your planner, whatever your organization method is. Write down these important and key dates so that you don't kind of miss them. So last page here, as far as kind of anything else that's kind of coming up, there are some academic wellness workshops that are coming up. We do have an academic success resource library. It's big, it's got a lot of stuff in there. Honestly, this will probably be something that you and your advisor or you and coaching can kind of go over together for specific resources, but I always encourage my students to look it over just to see if there's anything that jumps out at you in that kind of repository of resources that looks like it'd be something of help. And if you want to know more, if you like this activity of kind of going through guided self-reflection and kind of thinking about, your future and how you're going to be successful this semester, There's an email for our academic coaching program at the bottom here. It's just AS, which is Arts and Sciences, academic coaching at colorado.edu. I know that they are still taking on some new students. They are, super busy and stuff like that, but they're really excited to work with, first year students, transfer students, like any student that thinks that they can squeeze a little bit more out of their, kind of their self-motivation, that self-awareness piece, and are in that growth period of wanting to develop more skills. It's great. And again, my students overwhelmingly supported that they've gone through it. It's really helped. So yeah, I can't praise them enough. So yeah, I know we're at about quarter till. Yeah, this was my last slide. So I'm just gonna leave it open to the chat. If I think that you all probably have another session, I think at 11. So if you need to go now, you certainly can. You're welcome to. Thank you for sticking with it. Feel free to use this time as you need. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat. I'm here, and there are a few other advisors here that can answer some questions. But otherwise, that's all I've got for you today. Yeah, good luck in your transfer, and I hope that you meet with your advisor very, very soon, and that you make a close connection. See, Alyssa, it looks like you asked a question about if there's a certain number of workshops that you need to attend. I don't think that there's a specific number that you need to attend. Just please, engage with anything that you think is going to be helpful. Yeah, if this is the only one that's on your agenda for today, great. Enjoy the rest of your day. But if you think that there's, if there's more information that you think that you're missing and stuff like that, please let us know.
Hi, Jeremiah. That's a great question about kind of pre-med, pre-health advising. There are multiple resources that students here have. I think career services will have like the specific health professions advising, but you're going to be working with essentially both your academic advisor and a career service advisor to kind of make sure that you're combining your like pre-med coursework with your major coursework. And I can send you the link to the pre-health. Perfect, Susanna went ahead and added that. Take a look at it. You can always reach out to your main advisor and kind of get the ball rolling. And then that's a good place to start.
We'll give a few more minutes. There we go. Okay, so the COVID course question from Caitlin. I thought the COVID course was online through Canvas. I wasn't aware that there was like you had to do it by a certain date. Manuela, do you know anything about that specifically?
I thought it was through Canvas without a specific date. I think,
I just checked. Yeah, it looks like I pulled you up, Caitlin. Yeah, it looks like you do have that, but there isn't a certain date. You just have to do it before you register. So yeah, you can just go in and complete it on Canvas, and then you can meet with your advisor and you can start registering for classes.
in terms of internships, I mean, Handshake is kind of like the go-to place in terms of like everyone, but each department and each major will also have additional resources. So talking with your advisor about this is really key, because there's some like stuff that is internal to the department, other stuff with like our community members and our community organizations. So it does depend on kind of your major and the department.
We'll give a few more minutes just in case somebody's typing a question or still trying to figure out how they want to phrase it in their mind. Yeah, we'll give a few more minutes, but maybe at 10:55, if there aren't any more questions, we'll go ahead and shut the room down so that everyone can go on their merry way. Do any of the other advisors just have general tips they want to share with anybody who's lingering?
So one of the tips that I use for, at this point, everything is the Google Calendar. Since your CU emails through Google, putting like all of your like important dates and deadlines into the calendar, it will remind you on your phone as well as your computer when something's coming up. And so one thing I do is like, depending on the importance of the assignment or whatever meeting, if it's something that I can do in an hour, I have the reminder for the same day. But if it's something that like requires more time, I put a reminder for like a week or 2 weeks ahead of time so that it prompts me to think about it.
Good question, Jeremiah, about entrepreneurship. I mean, really specifically, when I think about entrepreneurship, the first thing that came to mind is like the business minor through the Lead School of Business. They have a specific track for entrepreneurship. Depending upon your major, your timeline to graduation, stuff like that, that may or may not be the kind of the right move. But if you're looking for a structured, way to learn more about entrepreneurship, that'd be kind of an option. Yeah, as far as student groups, yeah, it looks like Elise threw something in the chat there for an entrepreneurship program. I think this is, it's going to be kind of nuanced by group and stuff like that, but for sure there's got to be students, especially through Leads, that are interested in entrepreneurship. And even though you're in the College of Arts and Sciences, I would hope that it wouldn't, preclude you from joining your organizations and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Yeah, I'll speak a little more toward what I sent in the chat in VC. It's called the New Venture Challenge. I'll be honest, a lot of students start to get involved in it around their junior year or so. Once they have a couple classes under their belt, they're a little more accustomed with CU and the different projects, but it's a pretty cool opportunity. You can work with students in all different majors to kind of literally like market your own business or whatever you want to set up. And the team can get funded. You can win, it looks like on their website, up to $100,000. So to fund your project further. So a lot of students, if they win, or even if they don't, they go on to kind of bring this forward into their future career. So it's a really cool opportunity.
Awesome, thanks. I hope I'm not stepping out by turning on my mic, but it's just faster for me to respond verbally at this point. So yeah, thank you. I'm an NCDB major, so not so much in the business school, but that's a helpful resource. So thank you.
And we have a lot of biology students who do the business minor, so it's definitely something that can be added. It's just a matter of like reaching out to your advisor, and then we can like figure out how best to make it fit.
Awesome, thanks guys.
I just want to throw out a general reminder too, because I did see it through a chat, just about kind of how classes are working and stuff like that. You know, for right now, even if your classes are slated to be in person, you know, from when we start here on the 14th through February 15th, we will still be remote. So even if it is slated to be in person, we are remote the first few weeks. I know there is some kind of confusion about that. The other thing is that this, your Friday schedule for this kind of opening week is actually going to be your Wednesday schedule. I hope that your Buff Portal, your MyStudentInfo, I hope that they have that all lined up so that it matches. But yeah, you know, when in doubt, when you're looking at this first Friday of classes, it's actually going to be your Wednesday schedule. Well, all right. Oh, here we go. Can you please explain the Friday, Wednesday class? Yeah. Gosh, it's really confusing. Yeah, so this will be the only time in the semester that we will do this, that this will be expected, that your schedule is going to change. You know, kind of the background, as far as it's been explained to me, is that since Friday is usually a day of recitations, of stuff like that, that it doesn't make sense to have you take a recitation before you've had the first lecture. For just this first Friday of the semester, you will have your Wednesday schedule of classes. Again, yeah, that's pretty much as best it's been explained to me. Does any other advisor have a better way to explain it other than, yeah, just for this one day, this first Friday, you'll have your Wednesday classes, and then after that, it will go back to normal?
How I've explained it to another student is like, the first day of classes is a Thursday, and that's going to be a Thursday. The following day, take it as if it's Wednesday. And then you have a 3-day weekend, and then it's normal. Tuesday's Tuesday, Wednesday, so on.
Yeah, super confusing. And yeah, in a time where there's already a lot of confusion, it just adds a little bit of it. But you know that we as an advising community have also asked to make sure that, like, even if you make a mistake, if you miss your class and stuff like that, there shouldn't be any serious repercussions, because it's a lot to ask of all of you to all of a sudden just be like, no, think of your schedule in a different way, but then immediately change it the next week. So yeah, like, mistakes are going to happen. Don't worry about it too much, but I just didn't want you to panic if all of a sudden you missed a class, or if you end up being in the wrong spot at the right time, kind of thing. So. Okay, well, we are at 11 o'clock. So yeah, if anybody else has any questions, look at your Buff Portal advising to see who your academic advisor is. That's a great way to connect with them to schedule an appointment. So yeah, if there's anything still lingering, please send it to your academic advisor, meet with them, connect with them. Yeah, and thank you for sticking it out with us. Have a great rest of your week, and good luck with the start of classes.